So today we've got Dr. Ruth. She's kindly allowed me to have a discussion with her about her experience getting into dentistry. And we're going to get a lot from this. So make sure to get your notepads and we'll get straight into it. Dr. Ruth, she's done a lot actually. She's been in university, at the University of Kent. She did forensic science and then went into doing dentistry in Aberdeen. If I get any of this wrong, just jump in and correct me.
You're correct with her. You're correct.
She mentors students, she speaks at youth groups, schools, churches as well, advocate for girls in STEM, supports BAME students, so doing quite a lot, as well as having a blog, which is the Dental Student Network. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
Correct. And in 2019, you're actually a finalist for the Dentistry Awards as well.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, so we'll get into all of that. So I'd like to start by asking, why did you decide to do dentistry?
Well, firstly, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Honored to be asked. And why did I do dentistry? So initially, when I was really young, I really wanted to do medicine. And I don't know where that came from because I don't technically have any doctors like directly in my family. But I just decided I wanted to become a doctor. And then I kind of changed my mind as time went on and thought that, no, dentistry seems like the more kind of fitting role for me. It's still science-based, but still working with people. But with kind of, I feel like a little bit less responsibility. I say that loosely, but less responsibility and kind of like easier working hours than a doctor.
Yeah.
In addition to that as well, my dad's a dental technician, so I'd always kind of grown up with like dentistry kind of being around, but it wasn't my first go-through. I have two younger siblings. We always thought that my brother after me would become the dentist, but he can chose something completely different. So it just kind of, in some cases, almost seemed like the natural route. Like when I thought about all the things that I enjoyed doing, it seemed like actually dentistry is what I could see myself doing. So yeah,
but
that kind of became my decider.
Sorry to interrupt there. So
right.
How did it change from medicine to dentistry? Because that's one thing that a lot of people struggle with. Should I do dentistry or should I do medicine? So what for you made that switch?
I don't even know. I can't even say it was like a pinpoint or a decider that made me think, no, I don't want to do this anymore. I just thought, no, I don't really think I want to do medicine. And I'm glad that I didn't, because I think had I done medicine, I probably would have done a completely different career. So I don't think I would have enjoyed it. A lot of my close friends are doctors, and although they love what they do, when I hear like the crazy hours that they've had to do and all the other stuff that goes with it, I'm like, no, I'm so glad that I didn't go down that route, because I think I would have made a massive, massive mistake. So I can't really pinpoint it down to a specific time or moment, but it just made me think that, yeah, I don't think that's for me. When I kind of weighed up dentistry and medicine, I was like, no, dentistry's definitely got my name written all over it. Yeah.
And then you then said, okay, you decided on dentistry. And then what was the next step when you made that decision?
So by that point, when I kind of decided that I wanted to do dentistry, I must have been around leading up to like GCSE years. So it was just then picking the right subjects, like science. Well, you had to do sciences anyway and things like that, but being quite strategic about the decisions that I made therefore afterwards. So and then knowing that I needed to get certain grades to get certain to sit certain A levels and things like that. So I was thinking more on those lines from around that point. And that was like my next point of call. And then eventually got to sixth form and sat the subjects needed. So I did biology, chemistry, English language, and I did photography at AS level.
Okay.
And then dropped photography and then continued on the rest of them with the hopes that, get good enough grades to get into dental school, but I didn't. So I think, I can't remember the actual grades that I got, but they were not fantastic at all. Like they were well below average for what I needed. So although I had work experience and all the other great stuff that you need on your personal statement, I didn't have the grades to support it.
How did you get the work experience? How did you obtain it? Was it through your dad?
Yeah, predominantly. So I was really fortunate that I was able to get it through my dad because he had contacts. So I was able to get work experience in the hospital, work experience in a really, really busy NHS practice and a mixed practice as well. So I had like varying different insights to dentistry. And I think that's what even cemented my decision even more, because when I did the work experience in like a really, really busy NHS practice, just the way in which it was run more than anything else kind of actually put me off. I wasn't, at that point, I was like, oh, I'm going to make the right decision, because what I saw wasn't a real reflection of what I thought dentistry was.
Yeah.
But when I went to other areas and saw how other people ran their business and things like that, I was like, no, actually, I think that's just one side of the coin. There's other aspects of dentistry that, you know, kind of reflect a different side of things. So that then made me think, no, I think I'm on the right path as well. Yeah.
Did you think that would actually be quite a good way to get work experience, by actually seeking out dental lab technicians and then seeing if you can get through to dentists through that pathway?
It's a possibility, because I do know people who have, you know, either wanted to do dentistry or done dental hygienist or therapist, and they've actually got work experience with my dad, and then from there he's been able to get them other work experience. So, you know, it's worth a try. Even if you can't get work experience in a dental practice, but you can get work experience with a dental technician, just seeing a different side of dentistry is invaluable, because then you kind of put all the puzzle pieces together, and then you can understand, oh, this is how it works. So the dentist does this in the surgery and the technician does this behind the scenes, and then you kind of see how they all sort of marry up. So it isn't just this, I have to have work experience in a dental practice and that's the only way I can get work experience, because unless you've got the connections, like you said, you could be left without anything. So if you can grab something, no matter how small it is, that's invaluable. And I always say to students that it's not about how long you spent, it's about what you saw. So like, I know some universities often say that you need to have 2 weeks worth of experience.
Minimum. That's the magic number that everyone's going for.
How on earth are they going to check that? They are not going to check that. Trust me, they're not going to check that. They're not going to contact the places that you went for work experience and say, how long did this person spend there? They haven't got time to do that. So if you can write down the stuff that you saw that was interesting and you're able to put that into your personal statement, that's it. That's literally what you need. I don't really believe in this whole 2-week rule, because you know, you could sit there for 2 weeks and you could see absolutely nothing besides just checkups, you know, and you can still learn something from that.
I think being on an interview panel, actually listening to students speak, you can tell who actually gained something from work experience and who didn't. So it shows. It shows. So when you found out that you didn't have the grades that were going to get you into dental school, your options were they going to universities to do a degree in something else, or were they taking a gap? What were your options?
So the whole essence of a gap year was really like my backup plan if everything else failed. And when I don't know if it's still like this now, I presume that it is, but when you apply for dental school, you can only put down 4 options, and then you have your other options. So I'd only put down 4 dental schools because I was pretty convinced that I was going to get in. And so when I got rejected from all of them without interview, I was like, right, what do I do next? So it really was just a case of like thinking like, where do my interests lie? What do I want to kind of do besides dentistry if that route doesn't work out for me? Because I still had a few options left on like my UCAS form, I was able to sort of like use them for other things. And it literally was just, well, I call it gods, because that's literally what it was. I think one day at school, sixth form, I went to the library and saw a poster for the University of Kent and forensic science or forensic chemistry. And I was like, what's that? So I literally just sat there on the computer and looked it up, and I looked at the course and what it was offering. I was like, wow, I could actually see myself doing that. So I think I just literally sent off my personal statement as it was. And my personal statement was all aimed towards dentistry. Like I didn't change a thing, just sent it off. And I think within a week or so, I got an offer that provided that I got certain grades, I would be given a place and stuff. And I think at that point for me, I was just happy that I'd been offered a place at university, because everyone around me had their, you know, conditional offers or unconditional offers. They knew exactly where they were going to go, and they were just, you know, making sure they were going to get the right grades and stuff. And I had nothing to kind of show for it. So now to be given an offer and know kind of, you know, there's something in the pipeline, it kind of gave me that motivation to kind of work a little bit harder and then, you know, make sure that I could secure it, basically.
At that stage, were you still thinking, I still want to do dentistry? Or were you thinking, I've now changed direction?
No. I was still considering it, and I was looking at other ways in. So I was thinking, okay, what if I do a year at Kent doing forensic science, and then, decide to reapply again? Is that an option? There was also other options where I think if you'd done like arts subjects at school, like in sixth form or college, like music and drama and things, but you'd excelled and got A's and A stars, there were some ways where you could do like a foundation year and then do dentistry. Like some universities were offering that, but I didn't really fit the criteria for what they were looking for. So I was looking at all other possible options of like, how on earth can I get myself in? Yeah. And then eventually I just had to bite the bullet and think, you know what, let me just do this degree, which I really enjoyed. And then if I still feel like I want to do dentistry afterwards, it's still an option. Like I'm not cutting out all my options. It's still a possible option for me to do it. Yeah. And I think looking back, it actually was the better option for me, because had I done dentistry straight after leaving sixth form, I think I would have dropped out, because I found it hard enough as it was. So I don't think I was in the right mindset at 18 or 19 like I thought I was to go into dentistry straight away. Definitely not.
I think just what stood out to me going back to when you said you're doing photography at AS, I was thinking, you know what, that's actually an important course for dentists.
It is. I didn't realize that. You didn't even realize that. I had no idea.
That should actually be mandatory for all students applying for dentistry.
Exactly. I had no idea. No idea. Who would have known? Who would have known?
So you're in final year, University of Kent.
Yeah.
How do you then go about applying for dental school this time around? What's different about your application? Talk us through that.
So I had to be very strategic now, because I realized that, the reason that my application didn't succeed the previous times because it was academic grades. So I had to make sure that I knew exactly what the universities were looking for. So I read through every prospectus with a fine-tooth comb. And if I was not sure, I contacted them, I rang them, I sent emails, because I didn't want to send off my application to a dental school and it to be instantly rejected just because I didn't read the small print. Yeah. So I knew I had to be on track to be getting a 2-1 or above. That was a given. Like there was no university that was going to accept me without that. And also I needed to make sure that if there were other things they were looking for, like obviously UK CAT, all of them wanted the UK CAT. And some of them actually wanted particular grades at for science subjects at A level. So if I didn't hit the criteria for that, I just didn't apply there. Because the way that I see it is that I was running a race and there were hurdles along the way, and I had to make sure I could clear every single hurdle. So if there were hurdles in my way that I couldn't clear because I just didn't have the resources, that wasn't an option for me to apply to. So I was a lot more strategic the second time around applying than I was the first, which I don't think I did. I just presumed that, oh, my personal statement's fantastic, so that should be enough to get me through. I was so naive.
Like most
that should be enough to get me through. And it wasn't. It clearly wasn't. So I realized.
So did you apply more on the city and location and how you felt about the website for the first time round? What was your frame of mind like?
Yeah, you could say that. I was willing to I was willing and also prepared to sort of like leave home, because when I think of university, I always think about leaving home. So that was what I had in my mind. That kind of did play a big part in it, because I thought, well, if I'm going to spend 5 years here, it needs to be in a place that I'm going to enjoy. The second time round, that wasn't as much as the forefront of my focus, because I'd already done a degree before and I'd lived university life. So I was really there to just get my degree. So it did matter, but it wasn't like the most important thing to me anyway. So it was just a little bit lower down on the list of things that I was kind of looking for, but I was willing to kind of go wherever ultimately.
So you had filtered through the universities, eliminated some hurdles, and from then, what was next? Were you practicing for the aptitude tests as well?
Yeah. So basically I was doing all of this like preparation for dental school in my final year at Kent. So it's not as if I finished and then decided to reapply the year after. Yeah. So whilst I was doing like finals for my forensic science degree, I was like preparing for like dental school and stuff and applying getting my application together. So it was really challenging because I've got exams and then I've still got to apply for dental schools and everything else. So yeah, that was a bit of a hurdle, and I didn't tell very many people either. So obviously I told my family and close friends, but some of the people on my course that I was relatively close with at the time, I didn't share it with them, because I thought I don't want to kind of release this information out. If it doesn't happen, then it's kind of like egg on my face again for a second time round. So I thought, let me just wait until I kind of hear how things go, and then I can kind of let people know. And then
did you do work experience again? Sorry.
No, I got a bit more work experience, but I was so fortunate that I had quite a bit already under my belt. So I did the odd day here or there, but nothing in comparison to what I had done like 3 years prior to that as well. So yeah.
Yeah.
And then also as well, I didn't really want to share too much information with people, like I said, until I knew it was actually going to happen. And I didn't want people to discourage me, because I knew that, when you're if you have a goal for something and not everybody else gets it, sometimes it's easy for people to just kind of like sow seeds of doubt or whatever else. And then what makes you think that, you'd be accepted to dental school? It's so hard to get in and things like that. So I thought, no, let me just try and see how things go. And then if I get accepted, provided that my grades are good and everything else, then I'll share the information with the rest of the world. And I was fortunately was able to do that. Yeah.
That's good. So where did you end up getting interviews?
So I only got one interview, and that interview was the University of Aberdeen. Okay. I think the first university to get back to me was Peninsula, and they rejected me, which I was incredibly shocked by, because Peninsula is a graduate school. So I thought, if anything, I had the highest chance of getting into Peninsula because I was already a graduate, but they were the first ones to reject me. And that's the other thing as well. My main thing was that I definitely wanted a graduate school. So I was only applying to either graduate schools or universities that had graduate programs. I didn't really want to do an additional year. I wanted to just do 4 years, because I've already done 3 years for my previous degree. I was like, I'm trying to keep this as short as possible. Yeah. I don't need to elongate it any longer. So that was my big thing, was I need to find a graduate school. And yeah, there was very few universities that were offering the 4-year graduate course or independent sort of like graduate schools out there. So I had to be quite selective of where I applied as well, as a result of that.
All right. So Aberdeen, were they the last ones to get back to you? Or?
Yeah, they were. No, I think last but one. So after Peninsula, I was kind of back and forth between Queen Mary and King's. I think they wanted to know a bit more about my current degree and the breakdown for what I'd studied, because I think they were thinking, is her degree science-based enough? But it was. So I think once I kind of gave them all that information, they still didn't ask me to come to interview, but I had a bit more communication with them than I had done the previous time that I'd applied anyway. So that's why I kind of thought it was a bit more promising. And then interestingly enough, when I applied the first time around, the Aberdeen Dental School didn't exist. It didn't exist at all, because it was brand new. So they asked me to come for an interview and went to the interview. I thought it went okay, but you don't know how to read these things in some cases, and then had to wait a little while before they got back to me and then offered me a place. Yeah.
What was the interview like? Do you still remember?
Yes, I do. So it was a panel, not panel style interview. So it's like a what they call MMIs?
MMI, mini interviews.
Multiple mini interviews, yeah. And so some of the stations are probably given too much away, but anyway, I'm sure it will help somebody if they still use these stations. I think we had to do some manual dexterity tasks, and then we got asked questions about how you best work in a group or a team. And then another station was just, tell me a bit about yourself. How far did you come from today? You travel and things like that. So just random bits and pieces. So I was literally just myself, because I think with these MMIs, you can prepare for them, but I think sometimes as well, when you're interviewing people, you just want somebody to just be them. So I literally was just me in the grand scheme of things, and just kind of tried to let my personality shine through. And, by God's grace, it kind of got me through, which is great. So I don't remember feeling nervous at all. I felt very much at ease about the whole interview process as well.
Did you stay over the night before?
Yes, I did. And I remember I flew up the night before, and the snow in Aberdeen at that time was crazy for whatever reason. And even on the journey back, like, the snow was crazy and it was so cold. I was thinking to myself, I hate cold weather. I really hate cold weather. I was like, am I cut out for this if I was to get accepted to the place? Like, this place is really, really cold. But but other than that, the interview was fine. It was okay. And then we got a tour of the dental school, which was really nice. And so,
was it still taking 20 students a year?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it was around 20 to 25. I think they have the capacity to probably take 23 or 24, but they usually try and take around 20. I mean, don't quote me on that. I don't work for the university, but that's just what it was like when I was there. So
was UCLan built then? Do you remember?
I think UCLan was built, like I was aware of UCLan. I don't know what it was, why I didn't apply to UCLan. I think it was something in the admissions process, like either something to do with academic grades that I didn't have.
Okay.
And I thought, oh, because of that, I'm just not going to apply there. Because I knew it was a graduate school and I would have considered it, but there must have been something about it that I thought, oh, I'm like a few grades short of what they're asking for, and therefore I just won't apply. Yeah.
Right. That's good. So what was your experience of dental school like then?
Interesting. Dental school was interesting.
First year, did you feel like you settled in quite easily?
No. Looking back on it, no. And it's weird because when I was at Kent, I loved it. Like my first year was great, second year was great, third year was great. So I just assumed, well, if this is what university is like, then I've got no issues when I get to Aberdeen. But it couldn't be any more further than the truth. Like I really struggled. I struggled in so many different ways. Like I was so homesick for the first year. It was crazy. So when I arrived in like, I think maybe end of August or early September, that whole term up until September to December, I didn't go home once. So I hadn't seen my family that whole term and my friends, and I was just like so homesick. And like it was really difficult for me trying to like adjust to everything, like being in a brand new city and the academic work and everything else and trying to find my feet. And I just got really detached from it. And I didn't really know how to kind of express that to people. So I think that further added to why I found things so difficult. Yeah, and it was just really, really tough for me. So looking back on it now, I think had I kind of gone home at least once in the term, it would have been beneficial for me, just kind of give me a bit of a boost to kind of go back and really tackle things.
How about connecting with the other students in Aberdeen or just the locals within?
Yeah, so connecting with my classmates was fine. There wasn't very many of us, so it was great because we all, within reason, we all got along. So that was fine. There was no difficulties there, and like we would socialize together and things like that. That was completely fine. But I still felt very much alone, even in the midst of all of that. And it took me, I think, the best part of the end of first year, beginning of second year, before I really started to kind of like find my feet a little bit more. Yeah.
But what was your extracurricular like?
It didn't exist. I'll be honest with you. It honestly, like those 5 years that I spent there, I did very little extracurricular stuff because like I just found it that intense. And it was weird. Like when I finished and graduated, I actually had to tell myself, like, you need to find a hobby. You need to actually find something that you enjoy doing, because for the last 8 years, all I'd done was study, you know? And I know for some people, that isn't really like their experience, but that was really it for me. So, I mean, I went out and I socialized. So I went to the cinema, I went out to eat and shopping and things like that. But an extra like proper extracurricular stuff like sports and things, I just couldn't find the time to do it. Like my mind was so consumed with dentistry and studying that was literally all that I did. So unless like one of my friends said, oh, I'm having food at mine, do you want to come round, or we're going to watch a movie? That was as far as it went for me, unfortunately. I wish I could say it was a different story, but it actually wasn't.
How was it learning the curriculum, so the course content? How was that? Because dentistry is almost like learning a new language.
It is. It was. It's a big adjustment. It's a big adjustment. And like, I realized that the style of like exams and even like the way that the lectures were set out as well, like you have a full day of lectures. I mean, you know what it's like, you have a full day of lectures and it's just like information overload, and then you've got to dissect that and you've got to make sure that you understand it. And then as well, the other thing that I really found challenging in first year was like anatomy, because I hadn't done any anatomy in my previous degree. So like now having to like work with cadavers and like all sorts of things and like actually learn all the intricate bits of like the head and neck, I was like, whoa, how on earth am I going to make sure that I get this and stuff? So it was a complete adjustment in every single way.
Okay, so talk through us the difference from year 1 to year 2, year 3 and 4.
So year 1, I say was relatively smooth-ish. Still challenging at the best of times. Like I think some of my lecturers realized that I was struggling, and so they would kind of call me in for like what they call diagnostic meetings, which is basically to see how you're getting on and stuff like that, and if I needed support, which looking back on it, I was grateful for. And I got through my final year. I got through my end of year exams for year 1, which was okay, but there were a few exams that I was really, really borderline on. So when they came to giving exam feedback, you know, I looked at my exam papers with them and thought, you know, I could definitely have done a lot better than what I did. Funnily enough, the exams that I always excelled in was the OSCEs. Like OSCEs were my best exam. Like I was always kind of getting high marks for that. But everything else, like written papers and stuff, I really struggled. So I knew where my downfalls were. And that then really pushed me when I got to second year. Was in second year, I realized that I really, really needed to kind of like, you know, buck my ideas up massively. So by the time that I got to second year, I was just like going ham. Like after university, I'd be like going straight to the library to study, and then the library would close around 10 and I'd come back. And like, you know, I really wasn't giving myself enough of a break. So I was wearing myself out and kind of like burning the candles at both ends. But I was so adamant that I didn't want to fail, that I was going to do everything in my power to make sure that I was going to, you know, kind of put myself on the right path. But in doing so, I think it kind of damaged me. I think it affected my health. So my diet wasn't great in second year at all. And so I was eating for convenience. So I was eating like those microwave pizzas, chocolate bars, coffee, Lucozade. Like my diet was absolute trash. And then I would think that, oh, I've got enough energy to then go and study, but I'd have these massive sugar highs and then come crashing down again. So I wasn't being able to sustain myself. And then I was also incredibly tired, didn't have any energy. And then my hair started falling out as well. Now, that was like a big, big problem because I didn't understand what was going on. And it wasn't until I went to the doctors and she did some blood tests and stuff and it all came back fine. And then she said to me, do you think you might be stressed? And I was like, stress? What is stress? Because I
What
was in
is
such,
stress?
yeah, I even said that, what do you mean stress? Like, what do you mean by that? I was in complete denial that I was stressed. And she's like, no, you could probably just be, this is your body's way of reacting to stress. It's like you're doing a really intense degree, you're pushing yourself to the max, but your body's like trying to say, slow down. And looking back on it now, I was under immense stress, but I failed to realize it. So I just had to make some changes. I had to like improve my diet, you know, drink more water, make sure I got enough sleep. And in almost, I'd say overnight, things changed like that. And I had more energy to kind of sustain myself and to actually study and retain the information and things like that.
Yeah, but being a bit into that, because I did graduate entry as well. And when I look back, in my first degree, it was, as long as you're spending hours in front of a book or on a page looking at articles, you're doing revision. But by the time I got to dentistry, my way of revising completely changed. I was more strategic about how I revise, you know, taking breaks, going for a walk, you know, I was doing different things because I knew myself better. Looking back, do you think that you were studying smart?
I thought I was. I thought I was studying smart, but probably wasn't studying smart enough, in all fairness. So I was trying to sort of like be strategic, and my main thing is I didn't want the work to pile up, because you know what it's like, it gets really intense really quickly, and it gets more intense as the years go on. So I was like, right, so what I've learned today, I need to try and see if I can, you know, go through that this evening. But I wasn't always succeeding at that, and it was, you know, I think I was being quite hard on myself as a result. It's tough, but you do have to adjust your learning. You have to adjust how you learn in some cases when you get to dental school, particularly if you've done a degree before. And you know that, for example, like in my previous degree, with the exam papers, there'll be like 5 questions, you're gonna have to answer 3. And then, you know, they might recycle the questions. So if you look at past papers, you can kind of predict what might come up. You can't do that in dentistry and you can't do that in medicine. And I always tell people, like, even if it doesn't come up in your exam, you might need it for your career. So don't overlook certain things and think, oh, I don't have to learn that. Like, you need to make sure that you have some understanding. So it's a complete adjustment to learning how to study, particularly for degrees like medicine and dentistry.
How would somebody figure out the best way for them to learn and revise? Because I think unless you're a very self-aware student, it's not something that you'll easily stumble across. Are there any ways you'd suggest for somebody to find out what works best for them?
I think sometimes a lot of us fall into this trial and error. So some people just get lucky and they know that by sitting in front of a book and reading, they just get it. And others, they try that technique, or for example, they see somebody else who seems to be acing their exams and think, oh, they studied like this, therefore let me do it. And sometimes it might work for you and other times it doesn't. And I think for me personally, to answer that question, it really was trial and error multiple times before I realized that this is how I learn best, and then able to kind of run with it. And I don't think as well that, in all fairness, my opinion on education, that schools and stuff actually encourage us to sort of learn in the best learning style for us. Yeah. When you think about it, everybody's given an exam to sit, whether it's GCSEs, for example. So usually a written paper, but not everyone might be like, that might not be the best way for them to actually sort of kind of give back the information that they've learned. Yeah. In my personal opinion, because if you're somebody who's a bit more of an auditory learner, or, learns by actually talking or things like that, sitting in front of an exam paper might be really difficult for you, particularly if you don't like essays. I have a lot of students tell me, I hate writing essays, but yeah, all our exam questions are essay style questions, whereas I love writing essays. So that's like a dream for me, but I think it's unfair that we're all told this is how you're supposed to learn, and this is how you're supposed to be examined in one set.
I think you just saying that as well, it's making me think, I know a lot of guys where they peaked or matured at a different age. Yeah. So if they're being judged on exams they did when they were in A levels, yeah, but now they're completely different in their maturity and they're able to process things in a much better way, they're always forever being judged on that 1 year. Definitely. So there's so many things where it's not the best way of. It's true. Yeah, definitely. That's
what my one big gripe about the educational system is, that I don't think it's fair. And I understand there has to be a constant, but I just think to myself, I have friends who didn't go to university, but they're still fantastic at what it is that they do. So them being assessed in a particular format and then maybe for a lower standard doesn't mean that they're inadequate. It doesn't mean that they're stupid. It doesn't mean that they don't understand it. It's just, that's probably not the best way to actually assess that individual. Yeah. But what can we do to change that? They should become prime minister. At the moment, that's what the system is, so you've got to... Exactly, So in that case is what, it kind of forces you have to then just adapt with how things are. So once I realized that, I was like, I just have to roll with the punches here. This is how they're going to assess me. I need to make sure that I'm up to scratch. So for some people in my year, it was easy for them because the short answer questions, they were used to it, or it made sense to them. Whereas I'm like, I'm struggling here. Yeah. I have to put in 10 times more work just to make sure that I'm up to the same level as everybody else. That's true. So, okay, let's get back to second year. Second year, you've now decided you're really going to go in, but then you get to this place where, you find out that you're actually under a lot of stress. And then under a lot of stress, made some changes to my diet, like I said, and things were better from that perspective. And then got to the end of my second year and end of year exams for second year, and I failed an exam. And I was absolutely devastated that I'd failed, because I remember the exam that I failed, I left the exam when I sat it and I was like, that was really hard. Yeah. So I think I had doubts in my mind whether or not I'd passed it. And that was really, really hard. So when the results came in and I found out that I'd failed, I remember where I was. I was at King's Cross Station on a Sunday. Well, must have come home for the weekend, and I was waiting for my train to arrive. And I think there was a text message that was sent round from people in my year and saying, the results are out, have you passed and stuff? And so like my heart was beating. So when I decided to check my results on my phone, I found out that I'd failed. I didn't know which exam I'd failed, but I found out that I failed. And I was inconsolable in the middle of King's Cross Station, about to get on my train. Like, everyone was looking at me like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with this girl? I was in the floods of tears because my fear of failing had literally happened. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. How am I going to face everybody else knowing that I failed? I didn't know if anybody else had failed, if I was the only one, but I was absolutely beside myself. And end of year exams. Yeah, so for second year. Okay. So I was absolutely beside myself, and I had to face a 7-hour journey from London to Aberdeen by myself, just in floods of tears. When I got to university, I think the day or so after, my head of year at the time called me in for a meeting, and she said, look, you know, you failed one of the exams, so you're going to have to resit it. But when we went through the paper, I'd only marginally failed it, but it was still a fail. So I think I realized that I wasn't too far off the mark. It kind of gave me a bit of a confidence that, you know, you do know what you're talking about. You just need to kind of be confident about putting the right answer down. And then the university at the time had a policy that if you failed an exam, they looked closely at all the other exams that you sat. So with us and the way that the course was structured at the time, there were multiple exams that we sat at the end of every year. So I'd failed this exam and I'd passed the other exams, but one other written paper that I'd done, I had literally, no word of a lie, just hit the pass mark. So if you did exceptionally well in all your other exams and failed one, it kind of negated that. It's really weird, but that's how the university system worked at the time. But because I'd failed an exam and then just marginally passed one, I had to resit that other exam as well.
All right.
Yeah, it was weird. So when I found that out, I was like, this is so backwards. Like, how can you make me resit an exam that I've actually passed? Although, yeah, it was a pass, but I've just passed it. But that was the university policy. So instead of me having to resit one exam, I had to resit two. So the pressure was on. And I was the only person in my year at the time who had to resit both exams. So I was just like under so much heat and fire. But they were nice enough to give me a week off to, you know, spend time revising and resit. And I think the resits were probably like a month or month and a half later. But yeah, that was a testing time. But thankfully, my friends at the time, like, they really helped me out, and they would like check up on me and, you know, quiz me on certain things to make sure that I knew what I was talking about, and I went into that exam confident. And thanks be to God, I passed it. So I was able to then get to third year. Yeah, basically. And the other thing as well about Aberdeen is that although we're referring to it as first year, they technically start you off in second year because it's a graduate degree. So yeah, sometimes I use that interchangeable of first year, second year, but technically it was my third year that I'd kind of failed those two exams and had to resit it. But when I sat the resits, I passed both and was able to then get into like my fourth year, if that makes sense.
All right. Yeah. What was support from family like? Could they relate or understand, or do they even know how to support?
They could, but, you know, like being miles apart, and like they couldn't help me as much as they wanted to. And I think that was a difficult thing because I felt like I was alone. I was like, I don't understand why, you know, I'm in Aberdeen, I'm here by myself, I don't really know anybody. It's not as if I went to Aberdeen because I have family there or knew anybody. I didn't know anybody there when I got there. So it was a complete adjustment for me. And then me going through all the academic hurdles that I did as well, like it made it really tough. But my family were like my backbone, like seriously, like I would ring them every day, in multiple times in a day, particularly as I was studying for exams. And they really were like my strong support system. And God being so good as well, like around that same time, like I formed really great friends, like some of my best friends now at the time, and they were medical students. And so like I had them to fall back on, and they were also in Aberdeen as well. And then other people, like I realized now, they were just strategically placed at those times in my life when I really needed people that I could count on for support. So even it was just to kind of clear my head and do something completely different, I could pick up the phone and call them, and we could go out and do something else. They were always supporting me, encouraging me, you know, bringing me food. Like I never ever went hungry, particularly in that exam system, that exam season, there was always someone there to support me, and that was invaluable. So even though my family weren't there physically with me, I had other people there with me.
Okay. So what was fourth BDS like? So this is your third year.
What was the question?
What was fourth BDS, your third year? What was that like?
Yeah, so that was the most challenging year for me. So by the time that I got to fourth year, having had an experience now, having failed my, you know, exams the year before, I was like, right, this year, head down, you need to make sure that you just make this year as smooth as you can possibly make it. So fourth year seemed to be going okay. There's a lot of structural changes that were made whilst we were in dental school, and because it was a new dental school as well, there was a lot of like teething problems as well. So I think that with, you know, juggling, doing a really intense degree didn't actually help things. But you know, we made the best of, I don't want to say a bad situation, we made the best of the situation, if that makes sense. Because I don't want it to seem as if I'm slandering like my alma mater. I'm definitely not. It's just, this is just what my experience was like while I was there. And I think it was unfortunate that it was around the same time when it was a new dental school as well. So there's a lot of like things that had to be ironed out and things like that. So yeah, stepping into that fourth year was challenging, but there was a lot riding on it because everyone wanted to get to final year and then just finish and qualify. So yeah, fourth year was interesting, but I think it was definitely my toughest year without a shadow of a doubt. So by the time that I got to my end of my fourth year and sat my end of year exams, I ended up failing 2 exams again.
Okay.
This time round, I wasn't the only one who had failed. There was quite a few of us in my year group who had also failed exams as well. So we did the resits, and the premise was that obviously if you resit the exams, you have to pass both of the resits independently. So you can't just pass one and fail the other. So I did the resits, and I passed one and failed the other one. And I knew exactly what that meant.
Do you remember what they were?
What, the exams?
Yeah.
I don't even remember now. Yeah, I don't even remember. It's like, erase that from my memory. No, I don't even remember what they were. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I don't actually remember. But at the time, I would have told you every little minute detail.
Yeah.
But yeah, I passed one and failed the other, and I was devastated because I knew what that meant. And that was, you had to resit the whole year again.
Okay.
And I was not prepared for that at all, like literally, because that was like everybody's worst nightmare, to have to resit the whole year. Like, I think as well, because it's such a small dental school, you really don't want to embarrass yourself, because everybody knows your business. It's not as if it's a massive dental school and you can kind of hide it and things like that. It's kind of, everybody knows, and well, you're having to resit the year. No one wanted that shame on them, definitely not me. So knowing that that was like the reality for me, it really, really hurt me. Like, I can't even explain to you, like that whole summer period, I was like practically in floods of tears, because I was like, you know, am I prepared to go back and resit the year, knowing that everybody else, all my friends are gonna go into final year, and you know, myself, and there was a few other people who had to, in the same situation as me, so I wasn't completely alone. But even then, you know, you're thinking, this is not what I signed up for. Like, I've already done another degree before. I'm tired, I'm exhausted, mentally exhausted. I don't need this.
It's probably good to speak a bit more on that, because I don't think it's a topic that's covered much in terms of dental students failing exams or having to retake a year. Now, the way I like to look at things is to take a step back and say, you were good enough to get into dental school, which is a struggle already at best. And then the exams are going to be very difficult in dental school. You're under a lot of pressure. It's an accelerated course as well. So, you know, you're trying to learn a lot more information, you know, in less time. I mean, I guess in that position, you feel like it's the end of the world almost. What would you say to somebody who's having to retake an exam or retake the year?
I would say that, you know, failure is not final. And like, seriously, I realize that now, failure is not final. That's what I would say. That it might seem like it's the end of the world, like you don't know what you're going to do, but trust me, it's just the beginning. It's just the beginning. I don't know anybody, I don't care what field or sector that they're in, who has not failed at something, that has not used their failure to pivot them to greatness in some domain. So like, don't look at it like it's the end of the world. And even though there might be people around you pointing at you, laughing at you, or, you know, mimicking you, trust me, like, you can use that as your launch pad for something great. And I didn't realize that at the time in my own circumstances, but now looking back on things, I realize how pivotal me failing that year was. For everything. It's changed my perspective on how I view failure.
I think generally dental students are quite supportive. And I remember having to retake one of my exams, and my clinical partner actually had a session where, you know, our group, they made a card, and I think there was some cake as well. Like, they were supportive and really helpful in helping me actually with my retake. So I find that generally, you know, other dental students will want to help.
Yeah, and I agree with that as well, because even when I look back on it, like, on the lead up to some of like my research papers, some of my friends at the time was like, just come round to mine, and like, you know, if you've got flashcards, let me quiz you on them and things like that. So I felt supported from my friends, definitely. Like any way they could reach out to me, they did. And you didn't feel like you were in this alone, like we're all in this together. And yeah, so I agree with what you're saying. Like generally, if you've got the right people around you, then they will support you.
Yeah. And how did you find the retake here?
Challenging. So I think
learning new people's names, or actually it's a small dental school, so
it was small, so you knew. But I think the biggest thing I had to swallow was my pride.
Yeah,
as the biggest thing. But I'm not gonna lie, like that whole year, my confidence was zero, probably even -0. And that's a really, really dangerous thing for a trainee dentist, because I always say this, a lot of people are scared of the dentist. So if you're the dentist and you're scared, or you're fearful, or don't have any confidence, it shows. And then people lose trust in you. So I went from being, I'd like to think, quite competent clinically, like in the clinical domain of things, but because of everything that was happening, like my confidence like plummeted massively, and that affected other areas of my life as well. So it was tough, but I had to then literally just force myself, get out of bed and show face every single day. And it was really difficult, really, really difficult.
Did you have to retake all the exams for that year, or was it just the 2?
Yeah, everything, everything. So I remember when I was told I'd have to resit, I was like, okay, well, does that mean that it's just resitting the end of year exams? I was like, no, we still expect you to turn up to like your lectures and things like that. And if there's other mid-year assessments and stuff, then you still have to redo them as well. So I wasn't like exempt from anything.
How were your clinics structured? Because for us in UCLan, you had a clinical partner. So when I was the dentist, my clinical partner would be the nurse, and when she was the dentist, I would be the nurse. So you sort of got used to that same clinical partner throughout your journey. How was it for you in Aberdeen?
So the beauty of Aberdeen Dental School is because it's small, you start seeing patients from the end of first year.
Yeah.
And I guess you could say we had clinical partners to start off with. We were in clinical groups, like small clinical groups, but I don't actually remember actually having like a particular clinical partner. I always felt like there was more than enough nurses for us to have like one nurse each. And if one of your patients didn't turn up, then you just nurse for somebody else. And that's the one thing, like I wholeheartedly love Aberdeen University or the dental school for, is that they really got us having clinical contact really, really early on. Yeah. So I didn't feel like, even though I was resitting the year, from a clinical perspective, it was actually going to help me, because it was giving me an additional year clinically that a lot of my other counterparts wouldn't have had. So that was like, I guess you could say icing on the cake in a horrible situation, inadvertently. But our clinics were structured that we had clinical sessions every week. And then obviously as time went on, those kind of increased and intensified, and you had less lectures.
Yeah. Did you have the same nurse throughout, or did they just match the nurses?
Yeah, so different nurses every single time. And I think that's the beauty of it, because the dental school is quite small. There was more than enough like nurses employed by the university or the trust to kind of work there. And if there wasn't enough, then and you were spare, then you just nurse for somebody else. So they taught us really early how to be quite independent clinically from the jump. Yeah. So I know some other dental schools are different, and having now worked in a dental school as well, I can see how the structure is different. And I think the reason that's different is because the number of students that they have versus the number of staff available and like nurses available and things like that. But in Aberdeen, it's completely different.
I think that's what I liked about UCLan as well, that there were 32 of us in the year group, and it's not like there was a shortage of staff to help us.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess what was a bit different was, because you were saying you would have a nurse, an actual registered nurse. We had a student, and then there would be a nurse that was on the side if we needed anything. So that was a bit of a weird setup, how yours was.
Yeah, I mean, if in the beginning, like if, for example, first year and stuff, that sometimes was the arrangement and the setup. And also we had a lot of trainee nurses as well. So you had like trainee dentists and then trainee nurses, and you had qualified nurses too. So it was a big like melting pot of trainees and those who were qualified. So to be honest, it worked. It worked really well. It worked really well. And even like the ratio of like tutors on clinic to students was fantastic. And I think that's what you
want.
Sorry?
That's what you want, that personal
Yeah, it is
one-to-one.
what you want, but some dental schools can't execute that
No.
because they don't have the, the numbers of candidates or students is too high in comparison to the staff. So, you've got to bear that into consideration. But because Aberdeen Dental School is so small, that's such a beautiful thing to have, that I know that I've practically, in some cases, I don't have to wait too long before I need my supervisor over to check things over. Whereas you might be doing a crown prep for the first time, and then your tutor's got someone doing an endo and other stuff as well, and they still need to come and check you. So things might take a little bit longer, but with Aberdeen, they really do have that on lock, or they did when I was there anyway.
Was your clinic in Aberdeen, or did you have different clinics in different areas?
No, it was in Aberdeen. So the main clinic was in Aberdeen Dental Hospital, okay. And we had a paediatric unit, and we had the consultants who were there as well. It's not massive at all, but we had like mini departments, if you imagine, like just mini departments of everything. And then we had like obviously Max Facts in the main hospital, and then we did some outreach as well. And the outreach was based in Elgin and in Stornoway.
No idea.
Yeah, I know. But next time you watch the news, particularly when you're watching the weather, they always show Stornoway on the map. Stornoway is like very, 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 very north of the UK. So like next time you will see Stornoway. And we used to fly out to Stornoway.
My friends say I went all the way up north, but now that's north. That's real north.
Literally, yeah. But Stornoway was amazing. Like the people were so lovely, and then they had like another purpose-built dental unit there as well. So we got to do lots of outreach there, and I loved going to Stornoway. I really loved it. Like I felt like a proper independent dentist. You had your own surgery and nurse and things like that, and the tutors were really great. They were able to just sort of like challenge you, like, right, today you're going to do crown prep. Like, you're like, oh, I've only ever done one before, but yeah, you're going to do it, So things like that was really great. And then we also went to another place in Scotland called Elgin, and it's similar, another like purpose built sort of like dental unit as well. And the tutors there were also really lovely. So we did get a real good chance to see other parts of Scotland. And also do some work there as well, because we didn't get an electives like most dental students would. We didn't have the opportunity to do that, but we got some
we didn't
outreach.
either. We didn't either. Our outreach was a bit different in that so the first year was in Preston UCLan, but after the first year, at the end of the first year, you'd start to see patients, but we were split into groups of 8. So 32 of us, so 4 groups. So 8 went to Morecambe, 8 went to Carlisle, 8 went to Blackpool, and 8 went to Accrington.
Okay.
So your clinical experience on patients was actually outside of Preston.
Okay.
So it was a bit different, but it sounds similar to when you went on your outreach up north. It sounds similar to that experience. Yeah,
definitely.
How was final year?
So we'd have to backtrack a bit. So when I did reset my 4th year, by the time that I got to my end of year second time round, end of 4th year the second time round, if that makes sense, I had to still go through all the exams and stuff. And I sat my exams, and by that point I genuinely thought like my revision style was on lock. I was a bit more confident in myself and things like that, but still ended up failing an exam. And so by that point I was just absolutely numb. That's the only way I can describe it, because in my mind I'm like, I've already done the year and failed it, right, and had to reset, and now I've reset the year and then failed one of the exams again. Like, what's going on? Like, because it's almost like I was tearing myself to pieces. So when I got the results, I remember I was back home and I didn't even know how to feel. I was literally just numb by that point. And I remember calling like my head of year at the time, and obviously she was in Scotland. So I had to call her and just say, look, what do I do next? Because the situation that I'm in, in all fairness, I was expecting to tell me like, you've used up all your chances. Like, there's not much else we can do for you. I was anticipating to hear that. And she actually told me to quit. To quit. She's like, maybe this isn't the route for you, because you seem to be struggling a lot. Maybe it's better that you quit. And like, whenever I tell people that, they're always really shocked. And I don't say this to try and come at her, because any resentment that I had in my heart towards her saying that, I've just completely let it go. But I think what she was trying to say to me was that because I'd struggled so much for the last, 4 years or 3 or 4 years, and she'd seen that and witnessed that, I think she wanted to kind of put me out of my misery. And it's no different from, for example, it's a silly analogy, but it kind of explains it well. If you have a family pet, like a dog or something, and your dog's unwell, rather than see your dog suffer, most people will say, maybe it's best that we put the dog down so that we don't see it suffering anymore because it's in agony. And I know it's really silly to say that, that's probably, in her mind's eye, she thought the advice she was giving me was actually valid. Like, you're struggling, yeah? You keep trying to do this and you don't seem to be getting very far. Maybe just call it a day. But I was so resolute. I was like, there is no way that I've come this far for me to come back with empty-handed. Like, I did not believe it at all. So I said to her, I do not believe that I've only come this far. Like, the God that I serve, he would take me to the end, and that was it. And literally that just shut her up because she didn't have anything else that she could say. And when I put the phone down, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I will somehow. And I think they let me resit it. So we're going to give you an opportunity to resit it and, see if you pass. So it just meant that I didn't have a summer that whole year. I'd had to study. And then went back to Scotland to resit the exam, resat the exam and passed it, thank God. And then was able to just get into final year, literally. Yeah.
Gosh. So, okay. So what's your frame of mind then going into final year?
By the time that I got to final year, I was just like, I've had enough of this roller coaster, get me off. So however long the final year needs to be, let's just do it. And then let me say good riddance because I'm done. That's literally how I was, like, I am done. I could not wait to leave. So final year came, and thankfully, by that point, although I'd reset the year, I formed really great friends with one of my friends in that year. So we used to study and revise together. And that really helped me out because I think I realized for me, in some cases, for some exams, studying alone wasn't great. I needed to talk things out and make sure that I properly understood it. So once I realized that worked for me, like, I saw a massive, massive improvement, and also for her as well, like, she saw a massive improvement. So that was invaluable, massively. And then with the way things were at the time, you had 2 sets of exams. So you had exams in December, and then you had your finals in May. But in order to sit your finals in May, you had to pass your December exams. So there wasn't very many exams. I think it was about 2 exams you had to pass. But to be considered for finals, besides like making sure you had all your clinical competencies, professionalism, things like that, you had to do all that stuff. And then given, when they were taking into consideration everything, then they decide, right, this person is ready for finals in May. So I sat my December exams in final year and thought, I thought they went really well. Had Christmas, had New Year, came back in the New Year in January, and then found out that I'd failed both exams.
Wow.
Yeah, failed both exams. And I was like, what? Again?
Was it borderline? Like, do you remember?
They weren't too far off from passing, but, it was enough of a fail for them to say, you need to resit them, basically. And I think by that point, I was all cried out. Like, it's not that I didn't have any more energy left in me. I still had enough gusto to keep on going, but I was exhausted. Like, and when I say exhausted, I was mentally drained in every single way. And I just thought to myself, I don't know why this keeps on happening to me. But I realized at that point that there had to be a purpose for it all, because there was no way I was experiencing everything I was experiencing and it just to be wasted.
Building resilience.
There can't be, there must be some method behind all this madness, because I am putting in every hour that God sends to try and study for these exams. But I realized as well that at certain times I did second guess myself. And I think that once again came back to like losing confidence in the, the years prior to that. Yeah. So once they told me that, I could resit the exams, they said you can resit the exams in March, right? But if you don't pass the resits in March, that's it, end of the road. So I knew a lot was riding on those exams in March in order for me to be able to sit the finals in May. But thankfully, when I resat the exams in March, I was fine. I resat them and it was perfect.
Yeah.
And then it just meant that I was kind of ready for the exams in finals in May.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd say as well, it was a blessing in disguise, because I think had I passed my exams in December first time round, I might have got complacent and thought to myself, right, let me take a break for the first 2 months of the year, and I won't start revising for finals until maybe April or so. And then I probably would have been panicked and then cramming everything in. But because I had to resit these exams in March, I was already in revision mode. So I just stayed in that mode for the next few months because I knew that finals were only around the corner. So it was actually a blessing in disguise. So when finals actually happened in May of 2015, I passed with flying colours, like every single exam. And that was, I think, probably the first time I'd passed every exam without any issues.
Save the best for last.
Literally, literally, yeah. You know, it was still nerve-wracking, but yeah, to know that, you know, I passed every exam first time with no issues, I was like, thank God.
What did you do on the day that you found out you'd passed everything? Yeah,
so what they did, which is quite, I don't know if it's mean is the word, but it had a lot of, you know, it was very tense. Yeah. They basically, the word on the street is that if you ended up failing and you hadn't passed, you'd get a phone call, right? This is what other years had told us, you get a phone call. So I was sitting there with bated breath, had my phone next to me that whole morning and just, you know, seeing if it was going to ring, and it didn't ring. So I was like, okay, I don't know if that's a good thing, bad thing, or whatever. And then I got an email saying that, can you come to like the dental school at this particular time today? So I wasn't sure if I was going by myself or if I got there, I'd meet other people from my year. I had no idea what to expect. Yeah. So I got there, and as I was walking to dental school, so I didn't live too far away from it at the time, I saw other people from my year. So I was like, oh, they must have called everybody together at the same time. And then they put us all in the room together, and then they said, well,
why they do that, I don't know.
I said, why do they do that to you? Like, seriously. I was like, we'd like to take that you've all passed. I was like, oh my gosh, why have you guys done this to us? Like, all this suspense for nothing. Well, not for nothing, but like, you know, all this pent up frustration and whatever, so just angst and stuff. So yeah, and they told us that we passed, and I was just ecstatic, and also like, you know, elated, in tears. Like I couldn't express like my emotion enough for the accumulation of those whole 5 years. Seriously, to be told that you've passed, like you're qualified. Yeah.
Did you call your parents straight away?
I did call my parents, and my dad screamed down the phone like so loud, it was unbelievable. And then my mum, apparently, like she put the phone down. I was like, are you still there? And then one of her work colleagues picked up the phone and said, your mum's still here, but she's dancing around the office, like literally. So like, yeah, my parents were absolutely like overjoyed and stuff. And like my friends as well, who had supported me, like they were in tears with me because they knew the journey. They've gone through it with me. So they're like, oh my gosh, you know. And then also, interestingly enough, there were a few lecturers that were there at the time who just said, you know what, I just think you're an inspiration because I've just been watching you from the sidelines and you've gone through all of that and you've done it, you know, like you've actually just done it. So yeah, it was a really momentous occasion in for so many different reasons. It just felt so surreal. It took a while for it to properly sink in before I really thought, oh my gosh, like I'm fully qualified now, you know?